I would like to ask a few questions and highlight a few points and a few suggestions to the Honorable Finance Minister of India. She has brought in this bill with a good intention of improving banking, which we all are happy to be a part of that system, with more transparency and make sure that every depositor and investor is protected. What does a bank bring to you? Bank is a relationship only of trust. You trust the bank, that's why you go to a bank. So clearly, when it's a relationship of trust, the first thing you expect is protection in that relationship. So I appreciate what she has done, but I'd like to ask her a few questions which she could kindly answer in her reply. Is in the point 3, clause B, you have the suggestion given is regarding the tenure of the directors in the cooperative banks. My suggestion to the Honorable Finance Minister is, like when we did the Companies Act, we had made it prospective. So whether you make it 8 years or 10 years, whatever you've recommended, can we make sure that it's prospective? Because what will happen if right now there's such a big change in the system, there will be a whole generation of people, of directors, who will have to either be moved out. So that could create a huge disruption. So why not make it prospective? So starting from this year, it's a suggestion. Maybe you can put it a few years here and there. But I think it will help the industry. So it could be a plan of the next 5 to 10 years that a new crop, if you're probably wishing to bring in. Because in cooperative, sir, like you and I get elected, in the cooperative banking, they're elected members. So an elected member, they have capped it. I don't know what the intention of the government is to cap it. I'm sure it's a very noble intention. But if it's prospective, it will really help the industry. Hence, I'm making this recommendation to her. In the second point where she has talked about governance, standardization, and making sure that the depositors are protected. Sir, I have this question, which in the PMC case, the Honorable Finance Minister was most helpful the last time when we reached out to her for help in this case. But there's another bank called Shivaji Bhosle Sahakari Bank in Maharashtra, which is a cooperative bank. And there are many banks pan-India where the investors are not protected. Then they put the 5 lakh rupee cap. When you say, the normal reply from the government is that 95% people get their deposits back. It's only the 5% who don't get it. It's the large ones. Sir, from 5 to 10 to 15 to 25 is not a large amount. And what happens in these kind, I'm going to make a very pragmatic statement now, is really if somebody does a financial fraud in this country, should we put them in jail? Should be the first action. My question is, it's an humble suggestion which has come to me from people in my constituency and my state, that when there is a financial fraud, you pick up somebody, put them in jail. They are sitting in jail for 10 years, for I'll say. Nothing happens. People are still suffering. They don't get their money back. So what is the big advantage of arresting somebody? I'm not saying don't arrest them. What I'm trying to suggest is, why not first make that person pay back to all the poor people who he owes or she owes the money to, and then put them in jail or whatever system you want. So in any financial fraud, because what happens is the PMC, like an example, which she has been very indulgent towards us in helping, when those people, that entire family was arrested, for years nobody got any hearing for the reason that all the assets were in their name. There was nobody in the family to sell it, so the deposit never got any money. And then what happens if it's in a huge litigation, the government goes to court, it takes forever. It's the same thing what has happened in the IBC Act. The intention of the IBC Act was very, very good. You put them into solvency, but what happens? The court, which was first an arbitrator, a facilitator has become an arbitrator now. So you go to court, but justice is never done. So what is the whole intention of, I'm not saying, please don't misunderstand me, I'm not saying if somebody does a fraud, don't arrest them. Please do arrest them. But can we first have a system where you pay back the depositors? What is the intention of doing all this? Of cleaning up the system to making it a fair justice system so that the depositor is protected? How will you protect the depositor if he or she doesn't get the money back in time? They don't get loans, their children's loan, their insurance, their education loans. So how does it help? Or health services. So the first thing I think we really need to think, put our minds up, maybe you can send it to a finance committee to think about it with a solution, put all our minds, because nobody is against this bill. So how do we innovate to the next step? Strengthen our banking system and make sure the depositors is my suggestion to the Honorable Finance Minister. And she's also suggested that the Investor Education Protection Fund. The protection fund is like a pension fund. Now, this government for years have been raising it, sir, that the EPS 95, it's a little bit away from the banking bill, but I'd like to highlight, I'm just drawing a comparison, that the EPS 95 pensioners have given money which is lying with the government. They don't get the money that was committed to them. Now, in a pension, for years, it's been a decade. I mean, I'd like to quote, unfortunately, he's no more with us, but Honorable Arun Jaitley ji, when he was the finance minister, had committed to the EPS 95 people to get the money that they deserve. It's their own pension money, but they never got it. So I don't want this scheme also to go in the same way because we've had a history. So I hope that this Investors Education and Protection Fund, since you're calling a pension and a protection fund, is something very similar. So I hope there is no confusion in any of this, and the EPS 95, which is the pension money, they should also get it. One most important point is the cyber. As a matter of fact, just today, in today's newspaper, it has come, sir, that just in Delhi alone, 452 crores cases worth of scams in banks have occurred just in the last 1 year. This is just, I'm talking only about Delhi, sir. 452 crores. So how are we going to ride over the technology? How are we going to ride over dark net? So how is this, what is government going to do, or are you working with the banks? Because if you are making sure that you don't want scamsters, you want investors to be protected, so all these old senior citizens whose money is lying in the bank, how are we going to help them and protect them? Because a lot of times they get little notes, they click on it, and the money is gone. So what intervention is the government doing for technology? It's going to be very, very hard. I do understand, because not necessary that this dark net is anybody sitting in India. It could be anywhere in the world. So what intervention is the government doing to safeguard all the securities in the bank? Two small points I'd like to ask. That they were talking about all the banks, which Samvit Patraji extensively talked about how well the banks are doing. I appreciate that the mergers really did the good job of the merging, was a very good suggestion and an idea, and that's why the banks are looking much better and stronger. But was it the bank balance sheet appropriation that really made the magic? And writing off or haircut, you can call it whatever, was the reason that the banks are looking stronger? So if you could kindly clarify and see what it is. And one last point is that a lot of you talk about the Mudra loan, Government of India gives a lot of sovereign guarantee for many things. But there's a new thing which we are seeing, especially in our constituencies, for farmers' education loans, that the banks are giving a lot of money to NBFCs. It's a very last small point.
Please.
NBFCs. Now, when the bank gives a loan, it's in, say, 5%, 6, 8%. When there is they give it to NBFCs. So the core job of the bank is to give the loan. They are outsourcing it to NBFCs who are increasing the interest rates. So how do we control this interest rate? Because it's happening in a lot of farm loans that the NBFCs the interest rates are very high while the banking is not. And the last very, very small point, which I know she will give us a clarification, that banking globally is becoming smaller because the deposits in the banks are going down, because in the economies which are fast growing, people are moving to mutual funds as an option. So this is not this is not for the bill, but eventually, maybe 5-10 years from now, since we're talking about banking, is the government have some plans of the growth of banks? Because if the deposits will eventually over a period of time go down and people would prefer to go to mutual funds over banking, and conservative safe deposit as an option. So where does banking go in the next few years? Since this is such a comprehensive bill you're bringing for safety, I think we will have to think about this. So I ask her that with the economy being the way it is, because in the last quarter the economy has come down to 5.4. And I know that she has, the Honorable Finance Minister herself has been quoted in a newspaper that she's looking to cut the interest rates. So is this an option they are looking at? Because the Commerce Ministry and the Finance Ministry have been quoted today. So with the slow growth, unemployment going up, the food inflation going up, what is the government's plan? Because this was 5.4 is something we've been predicting for last, because India is no more an insulated economy with the global I would request her to please talk about how she is going to look at the growth story of India. Thank you.
Thank you. Sri Konda Vishwa Reddy.
No, Ravinder Vaikar.
So, sorry, Sri Ravinder Vaikar. Ravinder Vaikar thereafter. It is there? Okay.